Welcome to Sacred Realms. It's a great day in Hyrule, y'all. Welcome to Sacred Realms, a Zelda Retrospective Podcast. I'm your host, Lyndon Willoughby, joined for a cozy fireside chat with my co-host, Matt Willoughby.
It is a Ring of Fire episode, as the good Johnny Cash once said, and those waveforms look much better. Yay!
Yeah, I accidentally cranked the gain much higher than the gain should naturally be allowed to go. It was violating the laws of nature.
We would have blown all of your car speakers and or AirPods and or whatever else you happen to listen to this device on. And honestly, this podcast isn't worth any of those things. So yeah. I'm glad we got that solved.
The last thing any of you would have heard was that it was a great day in Hyrule.
Yeah, and coming from you, which, I mean, honestly, no one wants the last thing they ever hear to be you.
I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
No, absolutely not. Now, me, maybe, but that's a solid maybe.
Matt, do you want to explain to our audience the key differences that are taking place from our normal recording format tonight? We're doing something a little different, but
I mean, it's basically entirely different.
Yeah, completely different.
There's nothing that is the same other than the microphones.
But 'tis the season.
It is. Well, it's our short glimpse of the season until we go back to hot. This wonderful, beautiful evening, we are enjoying a little more casual style conversation. We don't have a table in front of us, and we are hand holding the microphones instead of on stands. We look like some coffee late night co-hosts on a talk show or something, like the Graham Norton show. Like I actually kind of enjoy this. This is very nice.
This is a very casual vibe. It's the kind of thing that we don't normally do because by holding the microphones, we're just increasing the risk of weird noises or jostling things happening. And we usually like to be a little bit more professional than that. But you know what? We don't have a guest tonight. I think that we can both keep things reasonably locked down. And I think we can keep them like throwing the mics at each other while we're recording this episode.
We've never thrown anything at each other.
We have not.
Which is really impressive when everyone thinks about it.
If there's one or two like wayward scruffle sounds as I'm editing the show, then that's cool. I'll just slice them right out. It's the kind of thing that I would never do if we had a third person that we were,
Absolutely.
that we were on with, right?
For sure.
But going to be a little bit of a shorter episode today, I think, and the weather called for it. And yeah, you know what? It felt right to just kick back a little bit.
And the fireplace is roaring, crackling merrily. It's fantastic. And look, this is our one of like 4 or 5 days in a row where we've had like low 60s, high 50s in the evenings. And later this week, it's going to go back to 90 degrees. So we're going to enjoy this and squeeze every little bit out of it that we can. So we enjoy it.
We heard from at least 10 or 15 of our several thousand listeners that last time we did a fire episode, the crackling didn't bother anyone all that much. So if that's not actually the case, then I'm very sorry. We will not make a habit of it, but it does feel so nice.
Yeah, this is not going to be a regular occurrence. So if it does bother you, apologies. It won't happen frequently, I promise.
How you doing, Matt? You had a big weekend. We celebrated the observance of your birth.
We did. Quite early, actually. My birthday isn't until the 23rd, so next week from the day we're recording this. But as we have alluded to a few times on the pod recently, life has just been crazy busy for a long time. So we had to buckle down and try to find time for a large group of adults who had a night free to celebrate. And that is very hard to do. So we celebrated early for my big 30th. Yes, turning 30 this year. Everything's falling apart. My knees hurt. My eyes hurt. Blah, 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 whatever. They actually don't actually feel pretty good.
I think you look great.
Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that. It feels good. It was a lot of fun. You and my wonderful sister-in-law put on the party for me here at your home.
Yep, in this very location, and where we now sit, Matt.
Indeed.
Actually, the setup is the exact same as it was for the party the other night. I didn't move anything.
No, nothing has moved except you did take in the... Well, that was unexpected. There's a little wayward ember going on over there. So nothing has moved except you did take in the outside projector. It was a Lord of the Rings themed birthday party. Lord of the Rings being my most favorite, really, I think, series, fantasy, sci-fi,
No one who
else.
listens to this show knows that we like the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, no, it was all Lord of the Rings themed, and it was very cozy and wonderful, and we enjoyed it a lot. It was a wonderful time with good friends and family, and I really appreciated it, and we had fun. And I got a great birthday gift from Jackson.
Jackson went all out.
Holy moly.
I mean, I was pretty happy with my birthday gift to you, which is we're going to go and do a fancy school where they show us how to cook and prepare all kinds of crazy exotic cuts of steak, and then we get to eat them. So
that always sounds fun to
that's
me.
going to
yes.
be great. Jackson got you like a $230 bottle of whiskey.
Well, in Jackson's defense of himself, he and his fiance split it, but still, yeah, crazy awesome rare bottle of heavily peated scotch called Octomore, which is out of the Bruichladdich distillery in Scotland on the Isle of Ely. And man, holy cow, that was good.
Not the one that Ron Swanson owns.
No, that's Lagavulin, which is my other favorite distillery. I am a Lagavulensman, no doubt, but I am also a Bruichladdichtsman, especially when I get gifted their top of the line whiskey.
Yeah,
and
you like your heavily peated scotches.
I do.
You really do.
I like them smoky.
Yeah. Yeah, that is not what we're drinking tonight. I don't want to get I don't want to put the cart too far ahead of that horse. We'll get to that bit as we have been doing here in just a little bit. This episode is going to be a little interesting tonight, not just for the reason that we've already stated, with the coziness and the fireside chat of it all, but also, as we've mentioned in a few recent episodes, we made the decision that this was going to be a chunk of the game that we had to split into 2 episodes. Originally, the schedule had everything we're doing this week lumped into the Arbiter's Ground episode, which we're going to be doing next week with Sam O'Neill, Nintendo Fangirl. But honestly, when we sat down and really thought about it and looked at, walkthroughs and just kind of looked at on paper how much game sort of happens in there, it was way too much to keep in one episode together. I think especially Arbiter's Grounds and the Gerudo Desert, they're such a cool section of this game with big plot ramifications.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we really want to give all that stuff the room that it needs next week. I do think that's going to result in just a slightly more svelte episode this week, because the reality is that it's not like we had 2 full episodes worth of content and we just split it in half. We kind of had, it would have been like a 2/3, 1/3 thing. So with this stuff being about 1/3 of what would have been that discussion. And so, yeah, not going to be probably a mega marathon episode, but who knows? I've said that before and I've been wrong.
I mean, look, we're coming off of a 3-hour episode with Max last week, so I think everyone, including us, could use a little bit of a breather.
Yeah, no, fair. That's a very good point. But anyway, still kind of the big turning point of this entire game, right? This is the middle point of Twilight Princess's narrative for sure, and it's opening the door to a lot of interesting things.
Yeah. This is the classic point in the Zelda game where we get our secondary MacGuffin, now that the first MacGuffin has gone out the window, in this case being completely taken by our antagonist.
Yeah, the primary MacGuffin never actually works.
No,
right?
Ever.
Hey, I promise these 3 spiritual stones, they are going to solve all your problems. Your worries will be behind you.
Psych! Go get the 3 pendants of power and get the Master Sword, and then we can free the kingdom. Psych!
It's like, once you have the Master Sword, I promise you can deal with all of this right there
away.
And then.
Just right away.
Yeah.
You fight the big bad right there. The game lasts 3 hours total. Everyone goes home happy. No maidens get kidnapped. No sages have to be awakened. It's all fine.
Narrator voice. It wasn't. Yeah. So it's going to be one of those episodes, but still really excited to get into it and talk about it. Let's see. Do we have anything else we want to bring up before we get into the housekeeping, Matt? I think that about sums everything I had up.
We have some more openness for Marin Open if we wanted it, but
we call it that. Did we ever figure out why? So we picked up that term Marin Open
from Greatest Gen.
Yeah, from hit Star Trek podcast, The Greatest Generation. And they use it all the time to denote an extended, meandering opening dialogue between the two co-hosts.
That has nothing to do with the episode.
Right. So that's what a Marin Open is, but I don't know why it's called that.
I think it's because
I think that's an inside term just between them. I don't think it means anything.
No, there's another
else.
podcast by a guy whose name, I think last name is Marin, and it's a podcast of that format where it's just a meandering topical podcast, like one who I will not mention, who has the owner of X on his podcast frequently. It's kind of like that style of pod.
Schmo Blogan?
Yeah, exactly, him. So it's a Schmo Blogan style podcast.
Gotcha.
But I think that's why they call it that.
Okay, very interesting. Well, in case anyone ever heard us use the term Marin, or in its verb form, to Marin.
Or Marin Opener.
Yes.
As a, what is that, an adjective?
Yeah, I don't know. Now you know what it means. Now you know what we're talking about. It's just us kind of shooting the shit like this for an indeterminate amount of time. I mean, so now that we kind of are at the halfway point-ish with Twilight Princess,
yes,
this feels like a pretty good time to have a tone check between the two of us on the game generally, like just big general thoughts about the game in totality. Yeah. Knowing that we came into this season with a lot of preconceived notions about what Twilight Princess was and the things that we wouldn't like about it. So maybe what a fun game to play would be, Matt, is each of us pick 3 preconceptions that we had about Twilight Princess.
Okay.
And then we give an update on where we're at with those preconceptions.
All right, cool. Let's take some off mic time to get our preconceived notions.
Okay. Hey, actually, Matt, while we're thinking about this feels like a good time to do our whiskey bit. How's that sound?
Yeah, whiskey bit is fun.
Okay.
Chili.
So as we have been doing recently, I poured us up something special to drink tonight while we record. We're not going to be doing whiskey all night. This is decently rare stuff, or at least in Texas, I've had a pretty hard time finding it. We're going to be switching to a nice coffee stout after this, which, oh man, that sentence just made me excited.
I do love coffee stouts.
I love a good coffee stout. So what we're drinking tonight is another pick from Old Forester. We had an OF pick last week as well. This is the Old Forester King Ranch edition. It is a 105 proof bourbon. King Ranch is the name of a very famous cattle ranch in Texas, and very similar to fictionally what the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch does, right?
These guys are kind of infamous for that kind of stuff. Yeah,
they have like a myriad of marketing opportunities and like licensed tie-ins. So like notably you can buy, I think, a Ford F-150 with their King Ranch brand on it. That is accurate.
So we are not allegating that they do any of the illegal things as depicted in the Yellowstone TV show. No, we are not allegating anything against the King Ranch folks.
Yeah,
just
not to my knowledge.
Very clear about that.
One allegation, which I think is indisputable, is that they have partnered with Old Forester Bourbon to make a special Texas edition pour. And basically, what makes this different from most Old Forester bourbons is that it's got mesquite in the. Not the mash bill, but like
they roast it with mesquite.
Yeah, it's got some mesquite finishing that kind of adds a very Texas bourbony flavor to the whole thing. It's definitely not a clone of like other Texas bourbons like your Garrison Brothers or stuff like that. Those are a lot darker. But anyway, it does have a bit more of a mesquite sort of flavor to it, and I do really enjoy it.
Do you want to know how the mesquite flavor gets in there? This is a fun fact. That's also for peated scotches. So the way that the smoky flavor generally gets into, unless it's an additive smoky flavor, which is just like a liquid smoke flavor, which that's terrible. But generally, if you have a smoky scotch like a peated or a mesquite smoked whiskey, what they do is as the grains that is going into the mash bill is in the drying floor, they will pump in the smoke from whatever it is. So mesquite smoke or peat smoke into the drying room floor. So the grain as it's drying just saturates in that smoke and takes on a lot of that flavor so that when it goes into the mash, that's how you get the natural flavor of the smoke.
Boom. That was an impressive little knowledge dump that you just dropped on top of us.
It was fun.
Yeah. Very nice. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, here's to the King Ranch.
The King Ranch.
Yeah.
Quite tasty.
Freaking fabulous.
Man. Oh, always good. Old Forester, I don't think misses. Like, I can't think of a single Old Forester product that I don't, at minimum, like.
It's one of the most consistently good lines of bourbon that I think I've ever had, for sure.
No, they're fantastic.
Okay, now take 2 seconds to think.
Yes.
All right, we hashed it out, Matt. We had a quick conversation, had a little sidebar there. I think that we each have our lineup ready to go. Sound good to you?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. I'm going to let you go first.
So my first one, I'm going to get it right out of the gate, is, when we first did this podcast and we kind of went over our rankings of Zelda games and our memories thereof, I think both of us had the impression or memory that Twilight Princess's story was kind of meh. And it was not like up to par of the top tier Zelda games that we have listed in our top 5, and at least so far, the first half of this game, I would have to say that my impression was incorrect and that I probably misremembered that. Obviously, there is still plenty of game for that to be, affirmed or denied either way. So not phoning in a roaring TIE Fighter. I'm not phoning in like a roaring affirmation of this game's story, but so far it has been really good. It has been very heavy, and it's been I've enjoyed it quite a lot. So I think that I will put that one in the Matt was wrong column.
Yeah, so this was the one that you and I actually shared. Our lists have one overlap. The Venn diagram does meet in the middle. And yeah, so that was one of my preconceived notions as well. And I will definitely agree that so far the story has been one that I've been enjoying quite a lot. There are a lot of elements that add emotional weight to the story by virtue of how much time it spends setting up its cast of characters, which we've mentioned several times. And that was something that I had completely forgotten about, but something that is very successful. The game at this moment feels like it has some fairly substantial stakes, in my opinion. I'm curious to see if that continues holding out now that we have freed Hyrule from the Twilight. Like, now that most of the people we set out to save at the beginning of the game are not in as immediate danger, I'm kind of curious if that's going to continue forward. And then also, as you said, we're moving from one MacGuffin to the next right now.
Right.
At this point in the game. And there are one or two things that I think are handled sort of clunkily, especially at this point, that I am excited to talk about once we get into the actual Sacred Realms rundown for this episode. But overall, I will say that, yeah, I agree. I think that this story is it's keeping me intrigued. Like, I'm in it. I'm feeling the stakes. I'm excited to see how it all unfolds. And I think that there's a lot of very strong elements. Tone is pretty good overall. Zant is a very effective early game villain. Mm-hmm. I think that, especially coming off last week, all the stuff that happened, in and around the Lake Bed Temple area. And of course, we didn't even talk about, we cut off last week's episode before we got to the
Zant cutscene.
The Zant cutscene. Yeah. So we'll talk about that a little bit more too.
Because we didn't have enough to talk about on that episode.
I know, right? So, but yes, overall story, I think is pretty good right now. I'm really feeling it. So, okay, I will go next. One of my big preconceived notions for Twilight Princess was that it was a clunky feeling game that lacked a lot of the refinement that I have come to expect from other 3D Zelda titles. Notoriously comparing it a lot to the Wind Waker, which preceded this game, and I had kind of in my memory as being a game that just felt a lot smoother than this. And so far, I will say that has kind of borne out. I still kind of feel that way. I will say that the human Link controls are not as bad as I remembered, but I still think they're lacking a certain spit and polish that I really look for from these games. Mm-hmm. Wolf Link controls are bad, and Epona controls are even worse. And yeah, I just think there's a fluidity that this game doesn't have, and so yeah, that's been yeah.
I think that might have something to do with you playing it on a Steam Deck, because me playing on the Wii U, I have played with both the Pro controller that has been plugged in, that has been wireless, and I played with the gamepad. And across all three instances, I think the game, even in human link form, has some significant clunk. And like, he's non-responsive. It's not fast. It's not. I'm falling off of ledges way more frequently than I do in any other Zelda game, just because there's a lack of precision to the control scheme. And we talked a lot about this with Max last week, so I'm not going to like go overboard on rehashing any of it. But I think you might be getting some benefit from more modern technology with the Steam Deck.
It's totally possible. Yeah, I would have to put them right next to each other and play one right after the other to really let you know if that was true or not. But yeah, I think you might definitely be onto something there. Yeah. Matt, what's your number 2?
Yeah, my second one is this game feels like Ocarina of Time going through its emo phase. It's 13 or 14. It's listening to a lot of Linkin Park, My Chemical Romance, and Coheed and Cambria. It's got the hair that goes into its eyes and wears a lot of black, maybe even some studded leather accessories.
Okay, until you got to studded leather, you were just talking about me in high school.
Yes, I know. That was intentional. And I was looking at you the whole time. So yeah, no, that was entirely intentional. And, I think that is still true, but is also reductive. So I'm not going to give myself a total point on that one, more like half a point. This is definitely an homage to Ocarina of Time, Zelda getting back to its 3D roots, and really appealing to that crowd who were adults or young adults at this time. So trying to tell an Ocarina of Time style story that is more adult, more grown up, has more emotional stakes, that was easier to convey in this time of game development where you had more emphasis on story and character development. So I think that, I do still think it is very, it still listens to a lot of My Chemical Romance and Coheed and Cambria, but so do I, and I'm 30, so I'm not going through my emo phase anymore. It just is part of my identity, and that's okay, and that I don't think that that's a bad thing.
As the famous saying goes, Matt, people who listen to My Chemical Romance in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
Absolutely. I am not throwing any stones. I was originally because I remembered it being more campy than it is, and it's not campy.
Well, I think you're definitely right. I think that it has a reputation that's sort of a meme-mutation.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, of being the emo
Copyright
one.
That. Copyright meme-mutation. Yeah,
okay,
we're copywriting that.
Yeah, of being the emo one. And I do think you're right. I think that can be a bit of a reductive observation, because I do think that while this game does have an intentionally darker tone, I do think that it, like I said, there is an intention there. Like it's very deliberately trying to set certain tones and attitudes and certain vibes, and they tend to dovetail pretty well with the story that the game is telling. So yeah, I think that while it can be a little much at times, I don't think that it's any more. It's not beating you over the head with that tone any more so than Wind Waker is beating you over the head with like incessant cheerfulness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fair. And that, because I have more to say on that, but it actually goes into my third point. So I'm going to leave it there, and we'll get your second preconceived notion.
Cool. This is my third because we shared.
Oh, that's
number
right.
one.
Yeah, you're third.
Yeah. Okay, so number 3 for me is going to be the items in Twilight Princess suck. And yeah, and I will say that so far I have been pleasantly surprised on that front. And it's worth mentioning that we still have a lot of this game's big ticket items left to come, right? Like we've still got, Link's little Beyblade thing, and we've got a ball and chain, like we got some cool stuff coming up still. But the stuff we have so far, Gale Boomerang and just the hero's bow, this game's version of the iron boots and everything that you can do with them, the claw shot, right? I do think that these items overall feel about the same as they do in any other Zelda game. So it definitely feels unfair to rag on them too much. I will say that all of the game that we've been playing up until this point has done a pretty good job of giving us reasons to use all of these items somewhat frequently, right? Mm-hmm. Like, even after we got out of the Forest Temple, we still had to break out the Gale Boomerang to put out fires on the cart chase, for instance. So about the only thing that we are never going to pick up again and used, I think, twice in the entire time that we played is the slingshot, which is completely useless. But
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess it's my third one then. So my third one was that the art style and direction of the game were non-memorable and just kind of lackluster. And I think I'm going to give myself kind of half a point on this one again. I don't love most of the art direction. I think it's like fine and serviceable. Link is obviously very iconic because they used this model of Link going forward for like him appearing in Soul Calibur 2 and all of the Smash Bros. Games for the next like 10 years.
Soul Calibur 2 Link was actually based on Ocarina of Time Link's design.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, but like you get what I mean about the Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
This was the Link in Smash Brothers for a long time.
Yeah.
And, this model is kind of enduring
even after Skyward Sword came out.
Yeah, it was still this one for some reason.
Yeah.
Whatever. But so I think that there are some things about the art direction that works really well and does hold up, but I think overall, one thing that you've said a couple of times is like it's very Ren Fair generic, and I think that is really true of a lot of it. This version of Hyrule Castle is not all that memorable. Castle Town is kind of whatever. All of the NPCs besides your main cast of supporting characters are kind of whatever. And what I mean by that is like the people who mill about Hyrule are whatever.
Yeah.
Obviously, like Telma and Ilya, Mallow, Tallow, Beth, like all of those characters have a lot of personality, but rando bards that are in Hyrule Castle Town.
I would say with the exception that the Twilight stuff all looks really cool. Shadow Beasts, Midna, Zant, like there's a very, very cool art direction that's involved in all of those characters, which I think is very unique and very successful.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Cool. So yeah, I think that's where I land with that.
Alrighty. Well, I think that was a fun little check-in on everything that we've been thinking and feeling on this game so far.
I wanted to follow up one point, actually, before we move on. So we both said that we had really forgotten how good this cast of characters is and like the emotional impetus of this game being completely on its characters. And like we had both forgotten that between when we last played it and now. And I'm wondering if you have any ideas on why that might be, and if that bodes ill for the latter part of this game.
I'm not sure, and it's not even that I necessarily forgot these characters existed. Like, if you had asked me, name some of the main characters in Twilight Princess, I would have given you, of course, Link, Zelda, Midna, Zant. But I would have remembered, Beth, Mallow, Tallow, Russell, Telma, Renato,
Ilya,
Rallis. Like, I remember all of these people. And so I'm not sure what it is that caused the significance that they play and the success to which they're used to be just like blocked out of my mind. I really have no idea. But maybe it's just because this is the first time that I've ever played this game in this format where I'm critically analyzing it while I'm playing. And I'm like, when things are working, I'm sitting back and trying to break down, well, why did that moment work? You know? And the root cause of why do moments work in this game very often comes down to, well, it was tied to a well done moment with a character who had a good amount of setup. So yeah, maybe that's just it.
Okay. I think that's totally fair. I don't have any better explanation. I like that.
All right, Matt. Well, I think that's enough freewheeling discussion. Let's go ahead and get the housekeeping out of the way and then jump into the main body of the episode. If you didn't know, Sacred Realms is a weekly re-examination of The Legend of Zelda, one little slice at a time. Sacred Realms drops every Wednesday and is available on all major podcast networks. Every week we play a new section of a Zelda game and then we sit down here to talk and to drop our hot takes. If that sounds fun to you, please head over to Apple Podcasts, hit that subscribe button, and be sure to leave us a review. 5-star reviews are greatly appreciated, and they have a chance to get a shout out here on the show. If you want more Sacred Realms in your life, you can head over to patreon.com/sacredrealmspod to get access to our Discord channel, listener mail, vote on what game we play next, and so much more. Additionally, one of the benefits that Master Sword patrons and above get is that we read their names every week here on the show. Those legendary individuals are Adam, Sakura Sky, Art, Jeremy, Derek, Cosmic, Link, Dante 2, Tom, Andy, Stephanie, Billy, Connor, Rachel, Shepherd Street, Matthew, Chris, Daniel, Fallout 907, Kelso, Chris, Tiffany the Star, Daxel, Patrice, Stephanie, Il Maestro himself, Dark Nook, Brian, George, Mike, Dylan, Lennon, Melanie, Kolku, Aiden, Rowan, Josh, Nick, Dante 1, Gep, Brittany, Davey, Haru the Mighty, Derek, Albert, Mark, Andy, Cameron, Ben, Daniel, Nick D_TV, Travis, Hyrule Interviews, aka Max Nichols, Garrett, and Drew. These are the most legendary of individuals, and I would go on a creepy haunted forest retreat with any of y'all any day of the week.
I would 100% do that, yes.
Yep.
Yeah. I actually would enjoy that quite a lot. I enjoy I'm not a ghost hunter or anything, but like that kind of stuff kind of fascinates me.
Some like subtle creep, is kind of fun. Yeah. Matt, I think we have a 5-star review to let off the chain.
We do indeed. Ryan A. Wall. Ryan A. Wall? I don't know. Ryan A. Wall. Gives us a 5-star review, and he says, as a longtime fan of the Zelda series from the days of A Link to the Past, I am thrilled to find a podcast which shows both boundless love for the series, which results in a love that critiques. The rapport between the brothers Willoughby makes for great podcasting. Well-structured, well-edited, and with a healthy level of humor, is probably my favorite podcast dedicated to a single series of games. An easy recommendation to make, and I'll squeeze in a random question prompt. If you were to touch the Triforce and your heart were unbalanced, which of the 3 pieces do you think would stay with you? Power, wisdom, or courage?
I feel like we've talked about this before.
We have, and it was probably like a while ago, so I'm going to forgive Ryan for not remembering or if he hasn't gotten there yet.
And since I couldn't even tell you when it happened, I think that pretty much means carte blanche. Sure, let's talk about it again.
Why not? He ends the review with, thanks for copious amounts of great content. Keep up the good work. So,
you know what I think we should do, Matt? I think we should say what each other's is instead of saying
our own. Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You're going to make me think about that a little bit.
Yeah? Well, I've got mine ready to go.
All right, you go first then.
Matt, you would be the bearer of the Triforce of Power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of an easy one.
Yeah.
And it's one that I own. I think when we talked about this, I did own that for sure.
But you would be a much more benevolent holder of the Triforce of Power than
yeah. It's not like a Sauron falling to the dark side.
Right?
Thing.
Yeah. No.
Hopefully.
Exactly. Sure. Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, hopefully, I would not do anything untoward. Definitely wouldn't raise a zombie army and try to conquer everybody. I can definitely cross that off the list of things that would happen.
I think that the base thesis for this discussion has to be that each of these pieces of the Triforce in and of themselves are not evil.
It's how you utilize them.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah,
so
sure.
You not being Ganondorf would probably be pretty okay having the Triforce of Power.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. I appreciate it. I would probably give you wisdom if we're gonna be honest. I think that you would also combine that to a little more of a goofy degree. You're already quick on the japes and the jabs and the sarcastic sense of humor.
The japes. I love that.
Giving you like increase plus 100 to your wisdom skill tree would really just result in a chaotic sorcerer guy who just like runs around and does silly goofy things that don't ever hurt anybody, at least intentionally. And if it did, you would feel so bad you would like rectify it times 1,000. So like, yeah.
It's kind of tough because I've never thought of myself as an academic. I guess,
I wouldn't. But I wouldn't attribute you being an academic to needing the Triforce of Wisdom. There's a difference between wisdom and knowledge. And I do think you are a knowledgeable person. I don't think that like academia is, but that's also not true. You have like an encyclopedic memory for things that you're passionate about.
That's fair. Okay, I'll own that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's
wisdom,
super annoying sometimes.
Wisdom and power. So basically, we would do really well in The Legend of Zelda or the cartoon series, where those two things are the only ones that exist.
Yeah, but we don't talk about the cartoon series unless it's a bonus episode.
Do our pieces of the Triforce talk to us?
I hope not. That was so annoying. That was really obnoxious. I do not want a talking voice in my head. At least not another one.
Are our horses named Catherine?
Well, I kind of wish my horse in Twilight Princess was named Catherine.
Yeah. Okay.
She does not act like Epona. I'll tell you that much.
Regardless, Ryan, we thank you so much for that 5-star review and for an excellent little prompt. Those are always super fun. Hey, you know what? If you have a question for us and you have not previously left a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and load that up. You never know. We might hash it out here live on the show.
And it's free. You don't even have to be a patron to do that one. So you can kind of get around the paywall a little bit.
You do not. Yep. Way to tell them how to game the system, Matt.
Hey, you know what? If it gets us more 5-star reviews.
All right, Matt, let's go ahead and talk about what we played this week. We do that every week, of course, in the Sacred Realms Rundown, which is a 6-part analysis of what we played this week and the feelings that it made us feel. This week, we are covering Twilight Princess Chapter 5, which covers the area of the game immediately following the first 3 dungeons. We find ourselves in the Sacred Grove, recovering the Master Sword, the Blade of Evil's Bane. We learn a little bit more about what's going on in the story of this game. Part 1 of the Sacred Realms Rundown is, as always, the plot recap, this week read by Matt. Take it away, Matt.
Plot recap. It's the plot recap. As read by me.
We land back in the cavern that houses Lanayru's spring, but as we turn to leave the area to plan our next move, our path is blocked by a towering figure in black and green robes. We almost run face first into the broad chest, and we look up in shock to see the emotionless masked head of our foe, Zant. Zant merely stands there like a statue, as if waiting for something or someone to appear. The entire cavern lights up with pure bright light as Lanayru explodes out of the water to challenge this interloper in his domain. But to our shock and horror, Zant sweeps Lanayru aside with what appears to be very little effort. The shockwave from the blast of power knocks us flat on the ground, and we look on helplessly as Zant engulfs the entire area in twilight once more. With Lanayru's light banished, we are forced into our wolf form, and Midna becomes corporeal once more. Other than a short exclamation of surprise, Midna can do nothing to Zant as he lifts her into the air with his magic and proceeds to steal the pieces of the fused shadow from her helpless hands. He taunts her, calling the fused shadow an ancient and withered power, and declaring Midna a traitor to the Twilight. Midna proclaims that she refuses to call Zant king on the basis of his abuse of the Twilight tribe's magical powers, which prompts Zant to proudly declare that his magic is not of their tribe, but a gift from his new god. He slams Midna to the ground with crushing force and begins to summon a pink orb of magic with obvious malign intent. Finally able to get our feet under us, we lunge at Zant to try to tear out his throat, but the pink orb of magic suspends us in midair before blasting us back with near-lethal force. Before we pass out, we feel a sharp agony in our head, and a suffocating feeling of darkness cloaks us all over as we sink into unconsciousness. Midna is now alone with the King of Twilight. With no fused shadows to supplement her power, she shakes our head in vain hope to rouse us. Zant isn't done abusing her, however, and lifts her back up into the air to rest intimately close to the mandibles of his mask. My Midna, did you forget? That beast is one of the light dwellers who oppressed our people. No matter how much you may desire otherwise, you will never be more than a shadow in their world. You cannot consort with their kind. But if we make their world ours, Midna, then light and darkness will meet at last. Our tribe will take back their realm, and sweet darkness will blot out this harsh light. That, Midna, is why I need you. Not just for me, but for all our people. Lend me your power. These last words Zant whispers in her ear with his own deformed mouth, but Midna will not submit to this impostor. In punishment, Zant promises to return her to the light world that she has been serving. He suspends her over Lanayru's spring, and in that moment, the great light spirit rises out of the water and uses all of its considerable might to dispel the shroud of twilight that Zant has cast over the land. Somehow Zant is able to escape the effects of this purifying light, while keeping Midna corporeal within its blast. She cries out in agony as the light washes over her, a being born of the twilight, exposed to the purest light that this mighty servant of the gods can muster. Lanayru uses its considerable power to teleport us and Midna into Hyrule Field, far away from the scene of Zant's interference. Midna is still corporeal and is very near death, and we're still trapped in our wolf form. Lanayru tells us to go to Hyrule Castle and seek the princess, that she is the only one who has the key to unlock us from our beast form. With the deteriorating Midna on our back, we speed our way across Hyrule Field with abandon, heading for Castletown and hopefully a way into the castle grounds. We remember that Telma mentioned running a group of folks who help Hyrule in their own way, so we head straight to the bar in the alley, only to be unceremoniously thrown out as soon as we step paw in the door. As we stand in the downpour of rain, we see a graceful and beautiful white cat jump out of the attic window of the bar. She introduces herself as Luis and recognizes us from our scent as the young swordsman who helped Ilya and Telma get the Zora prince to safety. She agrees to help us get into the castle through a secret entrance into the old waterway under Hyrule Castle. We have to go through the attic of the bar so that the human occupants don't catch sight of us and toss us out again. So with Luis's help, we hop into the attic and walk across some tight ropes into the old water system that leads to the castle. Instead of finding ourselves in a waterway, we end up in a curious house filled to the brim with gold coins, and a golden statue seated on a grand crimson chair atop the pile. In the corner of this room is a lantern that glows with a ghostly blue flame and seems to be floating in the air of its own accord. We use our enhanced senses to investigate and find a small ghost holding a huge scythe. We decide that safe is better than sorry, so we attack and defeat the ghost with ease by ripping out its glowing red heart. The statue on the chair pipes up and actually thanks us for defeating this specter. The statue, who goes by the name Giovanni, apparently sold his soul to the Poe in exchange for the extravagant riches that now overrun his home. The curse even extended to his poor cat, who is perched eternally on his head. He asks us to collect 20 Poe souls in order to release him from his eternal torture. He helpfully opens the path to the underground waterway, allowing us access to the place that we really want to be at last. The old waterway is overrun with enemies, and more than a few of the paths are blocked off by cave-ins. Some areas are also blocked off by giant spider webs and skulltulas, but we make short work of the monsters and use some nearby torches to burn down the webs. All in all, the journey is very much like our first trip through Hyrule Castle, except that we aren't dodging shadow monsters every step of the way. The ascent up the broken staircase is a little harder, as it's full of bokoblins and we don't have Midna's help, but the tight ropes are sufficient to allow us access to the roof system of the castle once more. The raging storm threatens to blow us off the eaves, but we dodge some Karkaroks and eventually make it to the princess's chambers at last. At first it appears as though she has vacated her cushioned prison, but as Midna falls from our back in exhaustion, Zelda appears with a comforting hand. Midna finally speaks and asks not for help for herself, but for us. We're shocked to hear our elsewise acerbic companion say it, but she tells Zelda that we are the ones that are needed. And even though it would obviously mean Midna's death, Zelda should use whatever power she has to help us instead of her. As Midna's breathing becomes more and more labored, Zelda takes Midna's small hands in her regally gloved ones. She takes an appraising look at us and seems to assess the situation with a wave of her hand. She declares that the magic that binds us is different than what first transformed us, and that it is a wholly evil power. She tells us to go to the sacred grove that lies deep within the lands guarded by the light spirit Pharaon. There we will find the blade of evil's bane, the legendary Master Sword. And only the Master Sword can cleave the dark veil of evil that shrouds us now. Zelda goes on to reveal that she has been granted special powers by the goddesses, like us, and we see on her hand the very same symbol of the 3 golden triangles that has adorned ours since we were young. Midna speaks up at last, making sure that we can get to the woods on our own, and making one last request of Zelda. She asks that the princess tell us the location of something called the Mirror of Twilight. This request seems to take Zelda by surprise, and after a long pause, the princess finally says, "Midna, I believe I understand now just who and what you are. Despite your mortal injuries, you act in our stead. These dark times are the result of our deeds, yet it is you who have reaped the penalty. Accept this now, Midna. I pass it to you." And as we look on, Zelda begins to glow with a bright inner light that spreads to Midna, lifting her prone body off the stone floor of the tower. Midna cries out for us to stop Zelda from whatever it is that she's doing, but before we can move, Midna has returned to her normal self. Still somehow corporeal in our world, but completely healed from her injuries. Zelda, however, has disappeared with the receding of the light, and she fades away into nothingness before our very eyes. It seems that Zelda has sacrificed herself to revive Midna and grant her the ability to remain corporeal in our world. Midna gets right back to business, with a more somber attitude than before, but with no less determination. She warps us out of the castle so we can make our way to Faron Woods to find this sacred grove. As soon as we touch down in Hyrule Field, we watch in horror as Hyrule Castle is completely encased in a prism of Twilight magic. The surrounding town and field are untouched, but the castle itself is now firmly under the sway of Zant once more. Midna's growl of rage and frustration is a good match for our own, even in wolf form. But there's nothing either of us can do about it right now, so we head south towards home. We warp back to Faron Woods and head towards the monolithic tree, which housed our first fused shadow, meaning to start our investigation of the deep woods here, since we're familiar with everything leading up to this place and have never found an ancient and sacred blade in the woods that we know. As we approach the forest temple entrance, we see the monkey who helped us so often on our journey through the forest. She's running helter-skelter across the branches of the trees as if she is being pursued, and once she lands on solid ground, we get a good look at her pursuers. A gaggle of wooden marionettes drop from the canopy above and surround our friend. These creations are man-sized and creepy beyond belief, with a menacing visage and their arms held out at unnatural angles. As they move in to menace our monkey friend, we jump into action and take them all out with a single lunge. As creepy as they are, they sure can't take a hit. And in gratitude for saving her yet again, she tells us that she was exploring a beautiful section of forest that she had never been to before, when these creatures swarmed her. She tells us the new section of forest is right around the corner, and if we can climb over, it should be easy to get to. Hopeful that this is the path to the sacred grove we are looking for, Midna helps us scale the great roots of the tree and make our way over to the forest entrance. After navigating some obstacles, we enter the sacred grove. This area of the woods is far older than we imagined, and the feeling of closeness between the trees breeds an air of mystery and doubt that the rest of the woods do not share. Very little light makes its way through the thick canopy of branches overhead, and yet the air feels alive with a jaunty melody that tickles the back of our mind with a familiar note. The way forward is blocked by what appears to be a door made out of a cross-section of a giant tree trunk. We make our way forward and find a howling stone, and once we complete the melody, a forest imp jumps from the tree canopy and lands before us. The imp is no taller than a child and carries a pose lantern in one hand and a trumpet in the other. Instead of a human face, the imp has a face much like the marionette creatures that we slew earlier. His face isn't menacing, but it is full of mischief, and his demeanor is that of a child longing for someone to play with. He giggles at the sight of us and lets loose a long blast on his trumpet, which summons a small group of the marionettes from the trees. He leaves his minions behind and heads through the door further on into the woods. We make short work of the wooden creatures and follow the imp, when we find ourselves in a series of forking paths that lead deeper into the woods. As beautiful as some of the vistas of waterfalls and great tree-lined groves are, we ignore these things and look earnestly for the imp. As soon as we find him, we give him a gentle tag, as if playing a game. He seems to want the game to continue, as he leaps into the air and heads through a newly opened path deeper into the forest. As we continue to search for the Skull Kid, we are constantly harried by his wooden puppets, even though they pose us no serious harm. We find and tag Skull Kid again and again, until finally he passes through a door that leads through an ancient stone archway and down into a large circular stone chamber. The area we find ourselves in is far older than anything we have seen in Hyrule, besides the great trees and the spiritual springs. The stone pillars and arches are decrepit now, but even in their moldering age, they still hold a sense of grandeur and pride. The room we find ourselves in looks like it was designed to hold 7 people, with one pillar in the middle of the other 6 that stand around it in a uniform circle. Skull Kid stands on the center pillar and is greatly angered that we've been able to follow him into this place. He leaps to one of the standing platforms on the ground and summons more puppets to attack us. We ignore them and head straight for the imp, but before we can tag him, he teleports away. So instead, we make short work of his minions and wait for him to summon more with the blast from his trumpet. While he's distracted, we strike. We do this a couple more times until the little guy finally calls it quits. He stands up and jumps high into the air, teleporting to parts unknown. But he leaves us with an echo of his mischievous giggle and a jaunty, if playfully threatening, bye. The stone door that blocked the path forward fades away and allows passage to the next area. Whatever structure this used to be was huge, regal, and laid out somewhat like a temple or castle. In the center of the cathedral-like courtyard we find ourselves in, there's a stone symbol of the Hyrule royal crest. We know from Lanayru's story that this depicts the Triforce, the great gift of the goddesses. This symbol also adorned the howling stone that we used to enter the grove, so we walk over and sing the song once more. The 2 statues that were standing guard on either side of the door glow bright blue and begin to move as if alive. They stand on either side of us, one in front and the other behind, and tell us that we must solve a puzzle in order to prove our worthiness to proceed. We have to guide these 2 back to their original guard posts, which is complicated by the fact that they move in opposite directions from one another. The once solid stone floor has turned into a grid of pillars that we must jump across, so we set about the task of guiding them back to where they need to be. Once we get them to their starting points, they return to their inanimate state and open the door to allow us entry into the inner sanctum of the sacred grove. Unlike the rest of the forest, which was nearly covered by the canopy of trees, the inner grove has a wide open circle that allows the light of the sun to constantly permeate this place. In the middle of this wide circle, resting in a stone pedestal that is emblazoned with the Triforce, is the Master Sword. The entire grove seems to hum with a purity that is stronger even than the spiritual springs. As we approach the sword, we feel it, as if the blade is reaching out to us. When we're close enough to the blade to see the etching of the Triforce near the hilt, a great wind fills the grove. The sword glows as brightly as Lanayru at his full strength, and the waves of power coming from the sword are strong enough to throw Midna to the ground and slowly push us away from the blade. As we struggle against this gale, we feel something being pulled from us, like a splinter from under a nail. From the center of our head, where Zant's black magic struck us, emerges a black and red talisman of wicked design. And as the talisman is pulled from our body by the purifying power of the Master Sword, we feel the cloak of darkness being lifted from us, and we return to our human form once more. As we stand in front of the legendary blade, we feel it calling to us deep within our heart. The familiarity of the hilt as we reach out and grasp it, the sense of purpose that the sword possesses. It's as if the very spirit of the blade were a friend from long ago. Before we realize it, we're lifting the sword free from its resting place, and as the tip of the blade clears the stone, it shines with bright light once more. We lift the sword to the sky in a salute that we never learned, but that we feel is right deep within our bones. The Master Sword has called us, has cleansed us, and has chosen us as its wielder against this threat to Hyrule.
Well done, as always, Matt. Let's go ahead and get into part 2, which is our takes, where we talk about this section of the game and how it made us feel. All right, I want to launch directly into a discussion about what happens in the spring of the spiritual spring of Lanayru after we get shooped back in there after Lake Bed Temple.
Launch me, Lyndon.
Okay, so it's so interesting to me because we basically have the Lanayru spiritual spring acting as the venue for 2 really big plot happenings in this game, right? We had creepy cutscene last week, and this week we have kind of a jump scare moment, right?
Yeah, seriously.
Where we turn around and who be there but Zant himself,
dude, and he is kind of terrifying. If we're gonna be honest, I think Zant is a scarier Girahim at this point in the game. You know what I mean? We talked a lot about this in Skyward Sword, where Girahim and Zant get that kind of the treatment of the Palpatine treatment, right? Where the big bad is really behind them, right?
Yeah.
And Zant alludes to that this week, so I feel okay saying that again.
Yeah.
But man, he's way scarier than Girahim ever was. Girahim was always kind of creepy, but also felt incompetent in a way that Zant feels neither of those things.
Yeah, Girahim had a bit of a flair to him, right?
He's very flamboyant.
A bit of a goofy flourish at times, right? Like wicked goof, but still a little goofy at times. And I think it's something about the way that they frame Zant in every shot he's in. So for one thing,
it's always a downward angle.
Yeah, the camera always is looking up at him from a downward angle, and he looks monolithic, right?
But even when they do the above shot, because it starts out on an above shot, but it's always angled at such a way that you get the full contours of his helmet and none of the rest of his body. So he still looks huge. Mm-hmm. His torso and his head fill the entire frame, so it makes him feel like he's 12 feet tall.
Yeah, and some of this too is just the creepy screech sound effect that they always let off the chain whenever Zant shows up.
For sure.
But I think the other thing too is the fact that he wears that helmet, and the helmet is completely devoid of any humanity whatsoever.
Yeah, there's no emotion. He's a faceless menace until he reveals a small part of himself, which only, in my opinion, serves to further the creep factor, the dangerous creep factor. He's got the split lips like the mouth of Sauron in Return of the King.
His mouth is gross.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And he's got the pointy teeth. And not unlike Rabbit from Monty Python, which now you can use the Tim drop.
Okay, all
since
right.
you missed it the other week.
Okay, fine.
For death awaits you all with nasty big pointy.
He's terrifying and he's powerful. He slaps Lanayru around like it's nothing.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that makes this cutscene so effective is that we just went to all this trouble to restore light to this section of Hyrule, right? And in 2 seconds of Zant just sort of showing up, he manages to completely submerge it in Twilight again. And obviously it doesn't stay that way, right? There's some extenuating circumstances that happen. But it is just it's a big power move. And it's just a really effective use of this character. I think at this point in the game, Zant is making an argument for being one of the all-time great Zelda villains, right?
Yeah.
Just from a concept and execution standpoint, the fact that we know a little bit about him, but the bulk of his backstory is still kind of shrouded in a lot of mystery. All we really know about him is what he's managed to actually make happen in the game so far, which is kind of a lot.
He's done more to conquer Hyrule than almost any bad guy in Zelda history besides Ganondorf in Adult Timeline Ocarina of Time, who did succeed in conquering all of Hyrule. Zant basically conquered all of Hyrule except Ordona Province.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, it's a really cool moment. And I do think just, again, like jump scare isn't a thing that happens in Zelda games a lot, but I appreciate it. It's well done. And so then we have a few really cool things that happen here. One is that we're shown that Midna is completely outmatched against Zant.
She gets punked.
Yeah, he has complete control over Midna. But at the same time, we get a little bit more insight into just how powerful the light spirits are. Because after, briefly kind of getting batted down, Lanayru is able to come back and rescue us from this situation.
Yeah. And so I think it's funny because you say that, and it almost felt to me like Zant let that happen in order to do what he did to Midna, right? So I know we just kind of covered it in the plot recap, but just to reiterate, like Zant comes in, beats the heck out of Lanayru like a garden snake, then tosses Midna around like a puppet and forces us back into wolf form, and looks like he's about to kill Midna with some crazy dark sorcery that he says is not from their tribe, it's from his new god. Then he's like he is king of the Twilight because of his new god, and he's getting this weird red orb of magic that he's about to like skewer Midna with, and we jump in front and it instead hits us and totally takes us out of the fight, right? Like we're Dunsky. And then he's holding Midna up, and it seems like he knows Lanayru is about to do this, because what he says is, I will let you become a part of this light world that you seem to be so fond of, or something to that effect. I know I just read this in the plot recap, but that was, a couple minutes ago, and I have a short-term memory problem because I'm old. I'm 30 now. So, like, he says something to that effect, and then like teleports himself away while somehow keeping Midna suspended in the Twilight realm, but also heavily enough to be influenced by Lanayru's light blast to where it basically almost kills her. And he's able to teleport himself to safety, but keep her there. And like, that is wild and scary. And it felt to me like he let Lanayru do that so that he could then retreat to wherever it is that he went, and then encase Hyrule Castle and the pyramid that he does later.
Well, because he kind of pulled a Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time in this moment, right? We come to find out that Zant has basically been hoping that we would go and dig up all these pieces of the Fused Shadow, and that's what he was really after. Like,
yeah, and he just takes it and he's like, "I'll keep this, thank you."
Yeah, much the same way that Ganondorf was kind of hoping that we would go track down all those spiritual stones, right?
So that we would open the Sacred Realm for him because he couldn't do it.
Yeah. Now, I will say, without getting into this, I mean, we know what's going on here, but I don't want to spoil anything. How does it make you feel about Zant knowing now that he is not necessarily the actual big bad of this game?
So I remember when I first played it and he referenced that, it didn't diminish him at all to me. I was more like, whoa, who's his god? Or like, is that even going to be a thing? Like, I remember there was a brief conversation in my head about like, is he just saying that because he's got a new power and like he's still the big bad? Or even if not, like, cool, what's next? What's after that? Like, he's so intimidating, he's so powerful, like what is more than that? Like, I'm interested, right? And I still feel that way knowing where it goes. Like, I still think that this is not a bad reveal. I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing to have the Darth Vader to your Palpatine, because Darth Vader is still terrifying.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that sounds right. I do want to say it's a really terrifying thing that they do to Midna. Like, once we get warped out of here and Zant gets left by himself, the spiritual spring, we show up back in Hyrule Field, and Midna she's about to go. She's on the bubble. And
she's totally like, they basically did like an inverse color scheme on her, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I like this.
Someone just hit Control I on that Photoshop layer.
It looks great.
Yeah. And it does look really cool. And it's nice because, again, like, Midna has been such a constant companion character.
But she hasn't endeared herself to you at this point. At this point, she's still been mostly acerbic and kind of antagonistic, but like, you kind of like her because she's got a spunk, right?
Sure.
But she's not like Navi, and she's not even as good as or as likable. She's not even as likable as Tattle was at this point in the game. But this is where Midna's character, for me, takes the hard turn into possibly my favorite companion character of all time.
My thing is, Midna has had so much more of a physical presence than those characters.
Yeah.
Regardless of what her personality has been like. She's just been there as a character more than a lot of Zelda companion characters are.
She feels very Tetra to me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, and because she has, like a face and
yes,
mannerisms and things like,
she's emotive, highly emotive.
It all contributes to this moment actually feeling pretty dire, right?
Yeah. She's highly emotive, and I think you see it most after you're teleported out of Hyrule Castle and Zant puts the Pyramid of Twilight over it, and she just like has this feral growl and snarl of anger and disgust. And like, to me, the way that she acted in the Princess's Chambers, which I know we're going to get to, but the way she acted in the Princess's Chambers and at this point in time, I was like, cool, I'm 100% Team Midna. Like, yeah, Team Midna all the way, yes.
Okay, yeah, no, absolutely. And I do think, obviously, the way that these scenes are shot and framed is very effective, but then we get the music that cuts in. Right?
Midna's Lament is one of the all-time. It is an all-time great piece of Zelda music, like top 10 minimum, maybe top 5.
It shows up very frequently in those. Like, if you're like me and you ever go on YouTube and are just Googling, best Zelda soundtracks of all, or best Zelda music of all time, Midna's Lament basically always shows up there. And it's so nice because even though it's very repetitive and it just kind of hangs on a loop for the entire time, it never gets old, it never outstays its welcome, and it does a very good job at establishing a somber and desperate tone for everything that we're doing here. That combined with the rainstorm.
Yeah, no, it's really great. It's so moody, and man, this section of game, like I did, and not entirely on purpose. I was actually like doing some laundry and stuff. But as soon as we got teleported into Hyrule Field and I had killed some bokoblins to make the area safe enough to just hang out in, I just let this play while I was like changing laundry over and putting some dishes away. And I was just like, I could just let this keep going for as long as I really wanted to, and it was amazing. It was truly never got tired of the soundtrack, never got tired of the ambiance. This is peak Twilight Princess ambiance right here.
Yep. So this kicks us back off into a section of game where we're doing something very similar to what we did in our first bout as Wolf Link in the early section of the game, right? Where we're kind of traversing Castletown / Hyrule Castle, trying to get up to see Zelda, because what we're told by Midna is that if we can get to Zelda, then Zelda will be able to help us get out of our wolf form, which I actually think that's very important to me, because Midna's not telling us to go find Zelda because she thinks that Zelda will be able to save her. Midna wants us to go find Zelda because she knows that's the only way that we'll be able to get back to our true form. And she at this point believes that Hyrule needs us. And to her, that's the primary concern.
And it's so telling at this point in time, and I remember thinking, even this time, and the first time I played it, I felt the sense of urgency, not for me. I was like, I need to get Midna to Zelda, because someone's got to help Midna, and I don't know who else can help Midna besides Zelda. And Midna isn't even thinking that for herself, right? And I think Link's frame of mind is probably also on Midna. They're having this bonding moment of, they're worrying about each other's state more than about their own state, even though both are pretty much equally like dire.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Link's not about to die. Midna is about to die, but Link, if Zelda can't help Link, he's going to be stuck as a wolf for the rest of his life and won't be able to do anything.
Right.
Like, so equally dire, right? And Midna goes from the pretty self-absorbed, acerbic person that she has been so far, because everything on the journey so far has been about Midna getting the fused shadows so that she can overthrow Zant, and like, we're just the tool to get that done.
Yeah.
But this is Midna changing tact 180 to you're the one that's going to do this. Like, and I think being humbled by Zant like that, and having the fused shadows stolen from her when she was helpless to do anything about it, even with their power under her control, however briefly that was, I think she's like realized like, okay, yeah, maybe I'm not hot shit right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, we really are just seeing some great layers unfold between these two characters.
Not unlike a certain ogre.
Got onions, or it's like an onion.
Like an onion.
Yeah. And I just think that that's really great because when people say that Midna is one of their favorite companions in all of the Zelda series, I think one of the biggest reasons is obviously, yes, her personality and the way that she's portrayed, but also it is just because these two characters have a bit more of a fleshed out feeling relationship that a lot of our companion characters don't necessarily have with us. I would say that at this point, Midna's actually in the top spot there. By the end of Skyward Sword, Fee gets a little bit of that just because Fee's farewell is so great.
Yeah, Fee's farewell still makes me cry a little bit. So.
And what Tetra and Link mean to the King of Red Lions kind of puts it up there a little bit, just emotionally. But I do think that this is just, I don't know, like we're starting to peel back what makes this relationship special earlier in the game. Which is good.
Yeah, I like that we're not saving all the emotional impetus of our companion character till the end, like is so often done. And like Tattle has this treatment a lot as well. Like Tattle's farewell at the end of Majora's Mask is also very emotional. But most of the game, she is, still kind of spunky and sarcastic, and you don't get as much of this fleshed out relationship as you do here.
Sure.
So Yes, agree. Yes, and.
Okay, so we go back to Castletown, and it's worth mentioning right now that this entire section of the game is Wolf Link. 100% it is a Wolf Link section.
Yes.
But
it's Wolf Link in the light world, which is the first time we've done that.
It is. And so that's
no, it's not. We had the whole Ordon village section. Sorry.
Let's there's just more of it. So I want to come back to that here in a little bit as a general kind of thing later once we've gone through some of the Sacred Grove stuff.
Yeesh.
But do you think that the journey to get through the sewers of Castletown up to Zelda's Tower is more fun here than it was in the opening of the game?
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
me too.
I think a lot of that has to do with the feel of the game at this point in time. Like the ambiance and the circumstances surrounding are so important to why this is better. Mechanically, it's basically exactly the same. Like you're missing Midna's jump ability, which forces you to use more like ropes and actual regular push some boxes to get up on tall things and
light some torches.
Yeah. So like none of it is groundbreaking in any way, but it feels more immediate. It feels more necessary, and like you're wanting to get through it fast, not because you want to get it over with, but because you want to get to where you need to be to help Midna and yourself to a lesser extent. So like I think the emotional impetus driving the section of this game is better.
I like our growing cast of helpful animal characters.
Yeah, the kitties.
Yeah, Telma's cat.
Telma's cat's great.
Well, actually, all the cats of Castletown are great.
I spent some time in Castletown as a wolf later and talked to all the cats.
Oh, yeah?
I wanted to because I like cats.
Okay, cool. But yeah, so what was Telma's cat's name? Louise?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So anyway, very helpful friend there. I think it's so funny because...
And very pretty lady.
Very pretty lady. It's so funny because she's talking to you so matter-of-factly like, hey, you can't really blame them for throwing a wolf out of the bar.
Well, you realize what you look like, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, don't body shame me.
Yeah, exactly. I do think it's so funny. Every other time that we've been Wolf Link in the light world so far, we've been in situations where discovery by humans has been something that was not necessarily a fail mechanic, but there's been a lot more stealth required here. And obviously we get a little stealthy section in Telma's bar where we have to make our way over the bar to the secret entrance to the sewers without anyone seeing or hearing us. But I mean, we're just running around in Castletown in full view of all the people who live there.
Yeah, and like they all scream at you if you run by them. Yeah, and the guards like...
What are the guards of Hyrule paid for?
To point their spears and back away in a cowardly fashion.
Nothing. I think it's time for the castle guard of Hyrule to turn over.
Amen.
Because they're pretty useless. So I love that Telma's bar has the secret entrance to the castle sewers. What I'm kind of wondering is, how much sense does that actually make for like a place of business to have just like a giant secret door up in the rafters?
Literally none until you understand, I think in the next chunk of game, what Telma's Bar actually is, which is the underground highway for the, unlikely heroes of Hyrule to gather and like help with things. So I get the impression later in the game that this is probably used by our group of like, I don't know what they call themselves.
Neither do I, but it's already been teased. In last week's chunk of game, Telma mentioned that she kind of heads up a group of people who are kind of the Order of the White Lotus of Hyrule.
It's literally Avatar: The Last Airbender, Order of the White Lotus people. Yes.
Yeah. Which is a really cool concept. And we actually see several of them having a meeting in Telma's Bar while we're making our way to the secret entrance to the sewers.
And you should eavesdrop on them if you didn't.
Yeah, definitely. It's really cool. Looking forward to catching up with those characters as Human Link a little bit later. Once we actually get into the sewers, to me, it feels really cool because we have some much more ancient like foundations of the castle sort of feeling to these areas. This to me felt like a very cool take on what I imagine the sewers underneath Hyrule Castle in A Link to the Past to look like. If that had been a 3D game.
Yeah, I think that's a really good comparison. I actually don't even have a better one. I think that's perfect. Yeah.
So it's really fun kind of making our way back up. We get back up to the roof pretty quickly. One thing that I kind of think endears me to this section a little bit more is that it doesn't really try to hold you up for all that long, Like it feels like it takes just the perfect amount of time for you to get back up on the rooftops, There's a few light puzzle things that you have to do and some very minor combat that you can get into. But for the most part, it's just scenery, right? It's just more tone setting, and it's a quick jaunt through a few new locations, which I think is pretty effective. Once we actually do get back up onto the rooftops, it's a very similar thing to what we had in the Twilight realm, right? There is a little bit of added mechanics of like the storm, the high gusts of wind and the rain and all that. But for the most part, it's not all that different. And before too long, we're back in Zelda's study. And here's something that I'm kind of wondering. We freed all of this section of Hyrule from the Twilight like a day or two ago,
Yeah, sure.
What has Zelda been doing up here?
Yeah, she's not imprisoned anymore, right? Like, all of the Twilight monsters are gone. So she totally should have shed her cloak of exile and been back in her throne room doing, rulership duties. So why is she still in her high tower in her cloak of exile? I don't understand. I think that's definitely a little bit of a plot hole there. And the scene here, while emotionally amazing, I think the emotional tie of Midna vocalizing fully that, Link is the one who you need, save him, just like leave me, whatever. Zelda's vocalized realization of, I think I know who you are now, choosing to give us the information we need, because I get the impression Zelda couldn't have saved us, but could only point us in the right direction. And then saving Midna's life by what I assume is the daughter of Mortis imbuing her life force into Ahsoka style of saviorship here.
So I mentioned earlier that there were one or two kind of clunky moments in this chunk of the game from a story standpoint, and this was one of them for me. I think Twilight Princess is a game where every now and again it does things in cutscenes that are left just a little too ambiguous. In terms of like what's happening.
Yeah, like what happened to Zelda? She just disappeared, but spoiler alert, if you have not played this game, stop listening for the next 30 seconds. Spoiler alert, she comes back at the end of the game.
But I don't remember
how.
I don't remember how, and I don't remember how she made it from here to there.
Right. Okay, now past spoilers. So Zelda does this thing, disappears into the ether, and then points us in the right direction, and we somehow get teleported out of Hyrule Castle again? Is that what happened?
Midna teleported us out.
Yeah, that's right. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. That makes sense then.
Yeah. So,
But also, this somehow allows Midna to be fully corporeal in the light world, where she was previously unable to do that.
right, exactly. I think it's something about Zelda's power that allowed her to do this. We don't get the logistical answers to those questions, so I'm fine with that. I don't need the complete functional ins and outs of this explained to me. What I would like a better explanation on is why we can't just warp now.
We can, though.
You can't free warp again until you get the Master Sword.
Oh, well, because the game's putting you on rails.
Well, I understand, but like fictionally, like Midna should just be able to take us around to the warp portals at this point. Like clearly she can warp, you know? So and here's the thing, it's not that big a deal, except not being able to just warp back to the Faron Woods means you have to hoof it across the entirety of Hyrule Field as Wolf Link.
Yeah, no, I agree that sucks. But I also I forgive it just because I know that is how the game is putting you on rails to go do what it wants you to do right now.
Yeah.
So like, fine. I didn't have any necessarily big qualms with that.
It is
other than my repeated qualm of Hyrule Field is unnecessarily large and empty, and I hate how big it is.
Right, sure. One more thought on Zelda real quick. Do we think that we have yet another instance here in Twilight Princess of Zelda, the character, being pretty shortchanged by the events of the story?
Yeah, kind of. Like, she shows a lot of agency in saving Midna at the cost of whatever it is that she gave up. You would assume at this point in the game it's her life. So, like, she exercises more agency than most other Zeldas at this point in the series. But yeah, like she comes out of her little dollhouse, does a thing, and then gets put right back in the dollhouse. Yeah. Like, Zelda is not a Barbie doll. Let Zelda do things. Zelda is a strong, independent woman who doesn't need a Ken. Let her be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I do think it's a little disappointing. You know, like we have a great character who is taking constant action in the story in the form of Midna, but it is just unfortunate because I think that Zelda gets put in this place a little too often for my liking.
Then that's just a series-wide complaint, not a Twilight-specific complaint.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So now we know the next major thing we have to go get is the thing that we all want to get in Zelda games.
It's what you want. When you boot up a Zelda game, the first question you ask yourself is, where do I get the Master Sword?
You want the Master Sword. So we're going to go get us some Master Sword. Takes us back to the Faron Woods. Zelda tells us that the sword is hidden deep within a sacred grove, deep within the Faron Woods. And it's so interesting to me, like, the logic behind where the Master Sword is hidden from Zelda game to Zelda game. I feel like actually it is most often in a sacred grove in the woods region, right? Like, more often than it is in the Temple of Time or underneath Hyrule Castle, it is often a forest somewhere.
This is going to make me sound really dumb because I'm saying this without thinking about it too terribly much. The only time I can remember the sword being in not the Sacred Grove is Ocarina of Time, where it's in the Temple of Time. Can you think of another
Wind
instance? Waker. But it's in the castle, it's not in the temple.
Well, right, but it's not in the forest.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker, it's not in a forest. Every other iteration of the Master Sword that we've gotten, to my recollection, has been in a forest glade of some kind.
Yeah, which is cool. I really like that. I think that's always like a very effective location for the Master Sword to be held. It feels very regal ruins, I guess is a good way to put it.
I love regal ruins. I love the feeling of the Master Sword, like, by its very presence, creates a place of purity. And to my mind, growing up the way we grew up out in the country with, you know, lots of forested trails around that we spent a huge amount of our childhood in, like, there are few places in the world that feel as pure as a forest that's been, you know, either untouched by humans' hands or was a long time ago and it's now kind of been reclaimed.
Yeah, well, that's my
right?
thing. These locations always make me think of those pictures that you see online of like ruins that have been reclaimed by nature, you know, castles and cathedrals and stuff that have been like the roof is gone. There's a few walls remaining.
And it's just overgrown.
Yeah, exactly.
So like in my time in Scotland, and one of our good friends of the show, Mark, who lives in Scotland, probably knows what I'm talking about. But like St. Andrews and the ruins around there, or any of the places, if you ever go on the Game of Thrones tour in Northern Ireland, where you get to see a lot of the filming locations where they filmed like Winterfell, or where Robb Stark was crowned king in the North. Like you get to go to some of those places, and they're all like that. They're old ancient castles from 800 to 1500 AD that have been that were probably destroyed in a battle at some point, and now have been reclaimed by nature. And those places feel old and cool and beautiful in a way that even standing castles don't feel that cool to me sometimes.
Yeah. To me, there's also just a really cool thing about the Sacred Grove having been so close to a point that we've spent a lot of time in so far.
Yeah.
Like it was just out of sight, but it was there the whole time. That's neat.
Yeah, it does feel cool. Like the consistency of where how the Master Sword got there. I don't need that answered for me necessarily.
So here's
like
the thing.
It's a question in my mind, but I'm like,
I want to get back to that at a point later in the game when we come to find out what the ruins are.
Yeah.
But again, I have some questions about the moving geography of Hyrule and like what this place is doing over there.
I feel like it doesn't. I feel like it conforms to the sword and the stone rules, where like if you can have someone pick up the stone and move it, you're not picking up the sword, so you're not breaking the logic of the sword can't be held by anyone other than its chosen master. So like
if
that's kind of what I'm going for at this point.
If Mjolnir is in an elevator, can the elevator still go up?
Yeah, exactly. That's the question, right? Is like, what are the laws of physics, and does it follow the transitive properties or not? Because if it doesn't follow the transitive properties, then technically you could do whatever you wanted with it. But like,
elevator's not worthy, Matt.
well,
Yeah.
The elevator's just doing its job, man.
Right, yeah, exactly. So, okay, we get over to the Sacred Grove, and this is so fun because there's a fun thing where the atmosphere is it's not creepy the same way that Twilight is, but it's just more misty, kind of like a benevolent creepy factor, I guess is how I would put it. Like it's not haunted exactly, it's not scary, but it's just
I would classify it as mischievous mischievous haunted, not malicious.
Well,
haunted.
it feels the way that we've always been told that the Lost Woods feel.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah. And to that point, we have a great soundtrack here, which heavily leverages the Lost Woods theme.
Yeah, and you get Skull Kid looks great.
And look, headcanon time.
It's the same Skull Kid.
I think this is our pal, the Skull Kid.
It's the same Skull Kid.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He would totally do this. Are you kidding me? He wants to play hide and seek, but he plays a little rough, and he summons all his little puppets. This is 100% Skull Kid from Majora's Mask. No one can tell me otherwise.
And he knows the song because we taught it to him.
We did.
Yeah.
We taught it to him.
Okay.
And that's why he eventually lets us past.
Yep.
Because he realizes deep within himself, maybe not vocalizes it, but deep within himself, he realizes, yeah, this is that dude.
Well, because this is true to his character, right?
Yeah.
He's not a malevolent force.
Malevolent. You said malevolent?
He's not a malevolent force, at least not when he's being possessed by Majora's Mask, right?
As long as he's not wearing the mask.
Yeah. No, he's mischievous,
Yeah.
and
he plays a little too rough for most people.
Sure, yeah. These little these wood dummy marionette puppets that he summons,
so creepy.
They are terrifying.
Oh, they're oh god, they scare me.
Yeah. That little like wood kind of clinky noise that they make,
and the fact that their arms are always out at a T-pose angle,
Yeah.
and their necks like move around a lot. Like
these look like a Goosebumps bad guy.
This is definitely a Goosebumps bad guy.
Yeah. So obviously, this is a really cool feeling section of the game world, but it's all done as Wolf Link, right? And it's all Wolf Link combat. There's no puzzle solving here, really. We're just doing kind of the classic Lost Woods thing where we have to follow the noise and go to the right place, you know?
Except this time it actually gatekeeps you from going the wrong direction.
It does, yeah.
Which is, I actually kind of wish it didn't. I do think that the Lost Woods are sufficiently confusing because the terrain is very samey all around. So I definitely was like getting turned around looking for the right door to go through. But I kind of wish that I couldn't have just brute forced it by just running around in circles.
Yeah, I agree. I wish that there had been just a little bit more of a, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for here? I wish there had been a bit more of a disorientation mechanic that was kind of happening here.
Yeah.
Where you can get shooped back to the beginning of the thing if you do it wrong. Too much of that and it becomes annoying, but just a little bit of it feels fine and feels kind of classic Zelda. So I agree with you.
And the first time it happens, you start being a lot more careful, right? Like, that's what I've always liked about the Lost Woods shooping you back is the first time you get shooped back, you approach the entrance of everything that could shoop you back and you like creep up to it. And then you creep up to every other thing and you're like, okay, which one is the right one? And you try to figure it out. So I like that about the shooping mechanic.
Yep. No,
we're also trademarking that shooping mechanic.
Yeah, I agree. So we follow the Skull Kid all the way through the Lost Woods, through all the ruins. We, beat a lot of the marionette puppets. And then we get to the heart of the ruins, which looks a little familiar. Couldn't tell you why. And this kicks off what was easily my least favorite part.
Yeah, it was kind of dumb.
I hate puzzles like this. So the puzzles with the two statues where you have to move in a specific order and you have to get them both each time you move, they move. One moves the same direction that you do and
the other moves the opposite direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, like this kind of brain teaser puzzle, it feels like the sort of thing that you would see in like an iPhone game,
Yeah.
Or something like that. Or like maybe like a Mario Party mini game or something. It just doesn't feel like you do have to think about it. It does require critical thought, but I don't know that it's all that fun.
I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I'm pretty aggressively neutral about it. I solved it semi quickly. That might be helped by the fact that I was snuggled up with my fiance, so I was just in a generally very good state of mind. So we were having some snugs. She was not a fan of the Wolf Link howling mechanic. She was like, "What is that?" So yeah.
Oh well, okay. We'll talk about that in Bloopy Trails, but yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, it took me about 5 minutes longer to get this figured out than I would have liked. I got it wrong one or two many times to have like really enjoyed it. And I don't know. I think that we have to do it again later. I could be wrong about that. I hope I am.
I think we have to do this in the Sky Temple.
Okay. It's another example of this game throwing in little side mechanics that happen infrequently and just feel like they kind of zig where they should zag.
Yeah.
I
get that.
It's kind of, obviously it's very different mechanically than the Twilight Bird up Zora's River section, but it's a similar thing in concept to me where it's like, they threw something in here that felt very different, and it felt just like they were doing it for the sake of throwing something different in there, And that's not my favorite. I'm not sure what would have been a better way to do this. Just come up with a fun combat mechanic where I have to fight these guys or something.
Agree completely. Wolflink could use a fun combat mechanic because he has none.
Yeah. Or even if like the floor of these ruins becomes a maze and you have to stealth your way through it and not get seen by them or something.
See, that also has some certain amount of canon to Ocarina of Time stealth mazes and the
right, exactly.
Yeah. So, I think you're right. Well, that's a better punch up for sure. Either give me some cool combat or a maze like thing that I have to go through.
Yeah.
This was not it. Give me a punch up. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'm there.
Yep. Sounds good. So we get past this little puzzle. We get into the sacred grove, the heart of the sacred grove, and we see the Master Sword resting on its pedestal. And I guess the magic of being near the Master Sword was just enough to revert us out of wolf form.
So I actually take no qualm with this, because what I take to be the Master Sword in its resting place, it's never disturbed. The Master Sword has never been corrupted by evil, right? Like in its resting place, even in Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, it just regenerates its power. It grows in its power. So like, I think the presence of the Master Sword is supposed to be like a purifying, holy, for lack of a better, stronger word, presence. So I actually think this works really well from a storytelling and lore perspective, that the Master Sword and the Fi wasn't around at this point in the Zelda series, but like you can retroactively apply this to Fi reaching out for Link and helping Link get to be where he needs to be to reclaim her. So like all of this really works for me.
Of course, we didn't know any of that at the time that this game came out.
Yeah,
but these are fun things that we have given like more history with this series past this point.
Yeah.
And so I agree. Like anytime I see the Master Sword now, I'm always just like, hey, Fi, what's up?
Hey, Fi. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love the feeling of connection that Fi has given to an inanimate object. Like, the Master Sword was always cool. And I always wanted the Master Sword because it's a cool sword. But now I want the Master Sword because I want that connection. I want my companion. You basically have two companion characters in every game that the Master Sword is in.
Yeah. Yeah. So is our headcanon that the lingering connection that Fi has to the spirit of the hero is what freed us from our wolf form?
And the power of the Master Sword's ability to repel evil.
Okay.
And also it contains evil, right? Like it has a portion of what is Zelda's sealing magic, right?
Yeah.
So it sealed whatever Zant's magic was into this little talisman that Midna can then use, right? So in my opinion, I believe that Fi reached out and purified Link and then sealed the dark magic that turned him into a wolf into that talisman that Midna can then use at will.
That thing that was just in our head.
Yeah. We got stabbed with.
It was just kind of in there.
Yeah. That's probably caused a killer headache.
So we've regained our human form. The evil talisman that has been freed from our body is now in Midna's possession. And this is an evil, pointy looking thing. And here is the time where we're done with our whiskey and it's time to open beers. Okay, so we've transitioned from whiskey to beer. This beer that we just cracked open is it's a local brewery in Dallas, Manhattan Project Beer Company, which I do believe actually distributes out of the Dallas area. They're kind of big, but it's the Black Matter Coffee Stout, and those two things, Matt, coffee plus stout, one of my favorite things in the whole world.
Yeah, that's a combo that don't quit. It's man, it is delicious. It's complex. It tastes like a really well-made cold brew coffee that's got a little bit of an alcoholic kick to it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love this stout. It's
Yep.
one of my favorites.
Amazing.
Guinness, I think, is still my favorite all-time stout, but this is...
Well, Guinness is a classic for a reason.
Absolutely. This is definitely my favorite. It's not microbrewery. What should we call this?
It's
craft.
Craft, yeah.
Yeah, this is my favorite craft stout that I've ever had.
Yeah. Okay, so we get the spiky thing out of our heads, and the design of this thing is really cool. We get some more really fun story tidbits here of Midna explaining, hey, Zelda was right. This magic is not of the Twilight people. It's something older and more evil. And that's about all the hint that we get right now.
Yeah. The design of this thing, and Lyndon, I know you won't get this, but anyone that's played Darksiders, this looks like something straight out of Darksiders 1. Like it literally looks like one of the demon hearts that you get when you kill like an archdemon in Darksiders. It looks really cool and I like it a lot.
Yeah, no, it looks great. Really just setting up more of a mystery here, honestly. And of course, the other mystery that gets set up at the end of this whole chunk is it was name dropped for the first time when we were talking to Zelda, and Midna asks Zelda to let us know where to find something called the Mirror of Twilight.
Yes.
And this clearly means something to Zelda. She has a line that's something along the lines of like, Midna, I think I finally understand who and what you are.
Yep.
No further explanation there. But Midna again here mentions the Mirror of Twilight and says, hey, we got to go find this thing. I was a little frustrated because I don't feel like we're going to get any further explanation from Midna about what the Mirror of Twilight is before we go find the first piece of it next week. And at this point in the game, I would really like, if we're going to get our focus shifted to another MacGuffin, I would like to have a bit of an establishing statement from one of the main characters about like, hey, so that last plan didn't work, but I have a new idea. Here's kind of what I'm thinking. You don't have to lay the whole story out for me, but just give me something.
Yeah, like Midna had this whole thing of go and get the pieces of Fuse Shadow and just trust me that it's going to be good and I'm going to do what I need to do with them. And she's kind of doing the same thing with the Mirror of Twilight, which when she was on death's doorstep made sense. Like, yes, Midna is about to die. She doesn't have time to tell you the whole backstory of the Mirror of Twilight. But now we're in the Sacred Grove. She's restored to full health. We're restored to full health. And she has established that she trusts us to a very large extent. So like, hey, just maybe give me something to go off of here, right? So I feel like that would have been a further character building, relationship building moment for Midna to actually talk about what her plan might be, not in full detail. And maybe she only has like a rough outline, but give me the bullet points. Just give me the 3 bullet point version, what the Mirror of Twilight is, how you're going to use it, and how do we go get it? Like, just give me the 3 bullet points, high level, executive summary overview, which is something we use a lot in my job. That's the jargon from my workplace. Like, just give me something. But instead, the writers, and by extension Midna, just keep kind of dragging it out like we're a fish on a line.
Yeah.
And they're just slow reeling it in. And I know that this pays off because the cinematics we get next week and the week after, because I don't think we're going to have the big cinematic next week. I don't know what our plot recap's going to look for the next episode, but like we end up getting a really great story beat cinematic moment over the next week or two that like pays it off. But honestly, I could kind of use it right here. I think at least some of it could go here to really give me more backstory and help me to connect with Midna and with this new plan, since our last one went so terribly awry.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's an interesting place to leave all of the things that we get up to here. It's fun, just like as an ending point. It's fun being back in human Link body with the Master Sword. It's fun knowing that we have to go find another thing, and the little breadcrumbs of the larger story that's being told are intriguing as well. These are like, this is a fun combination of things that's being set up right here. But in some ways it does also feel a little abrupt. So we'll catch up as we get further into the game on whether or not we feel like this is a good turn for the story to take. But for right now, we have some fun questions and just a little bit of exasperation about like,
do we need more questions?
Fill me in a little bit here,
Yeah, and look, we have to be fully transparent that this is another instance of like the format of the pod not necessarily helping a whole lot with the story beats. But I also have to like realize that this is where I would have stopped naturally, even had we kept these sections together. Like, this was probably an hour and a bit worth of game that I played, and this is a very natural stopping point for someone who's like getting in a quick session or even like coming to the end of a long session. So like this is a very natural kind of pause. So I think when you're writing a video game and you're directing a video game, you kind of have to take into mind what is a natural pause for my player. Where is it that they're, because you very rarely have a player that's going to sit there and go 100% of the way through the story or even 50% of the way through the story. So taking into consideration, where are my players going to be pausing? Where are their stopping points? And how do we want them to feel at these stopping points? Or how do we want to signify that this is a good stopping point? And I think that they did well for the most part, but left it a little too open considering the history of where we've been so far, where it's just been open-ended question after open-ended question after open-ended question. Yeah. And now we get another open-ended question. Like at some point that becomes frustrating to like, I'm hitting all of these pause points. I'm hitting all of these times where like, it's time to go have dinner. I need to put the kid down. I need to go to bed so I can go to class in the morning. At like XYZ, whatever your excuse is. I've hit a natural stopping point. And I just like I have more questions than I have answers yet again. Yeah. And like at some point that is not an effective storytelling mechanic. Yeah. So I do think that there could have been just even a little bit more here to really close it off as a good bookend.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. All right. Do we have anything else we want to say about this section of game before we move on to talk about some other stuff? And of course, this week, part 3, the dungeon map, is going on a hiatus because there was no dungeon.
No dungeon. No, I'm good.
All right, let's get into part 4, which is Bloopy Trails, where we talk about interesting things that diverted our attention. Do you mind if I go first? Because I have a few. I did far less Bloopy Trail stuff than you did this week. And I kind of wish that I had done this a bit more similarly to you, because I pretty much hung it up at this point and stopped playing for the week.
Oh, big mistake, bro.
You went and actually, post becoming Human Link again, went and got up to some Bloopy Trail stuff.
I did another 2.5-ish hours worth of Bloopy Trails.
Okay, gotcha, cool. So the only ones that I've got a small one and then a slightly larger one. The small one for me is going to be the 2 very quick back-to-back wolf stones that we find here. So I didn't actually go do any combat training because, like I said, I stopped playing after turning back into Human Link. But I did think it was really weird how they had 2 wolf whistling stones right next to each other. Like there's one at the entrance to the Sacred Grove.
But that one doesn't give you a wolf link.
Oh, you know what?
That's just Zelda.
You're right. One of them is just for Zelda's Lullaby.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I got my wires crossed there. So yeah, I did a Wolf Link statue. The song that we got there was bum 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 bum.
The Minuet of Light.
Yeah. And so, look, I just love hearing these songs. I love hearing these songs in this game.
Never a bad time to hear any of these songs. Yes.
Yeah. So I did that. The larger one that I did was, and I don't know if you can accurately call this a Bloopy Trail because you have to meet this character in order to get through this section of game, but it does open up one of the main side questy item collection things in Twilight Princess, so I'm going to include it. And that is meeting the character Giovanni behind Telma's bar.
I love Giovanni.
Giovanni is really something. So the story that we have for Giovanni is that his greed was literally so great that he sold his soul and he became made of pure gold and jewels. He's frozen in the permanent form of like this gilded statue. His cat is frozen on his head, which I thought was hilarious. He seemed like he was very distressed about that.
I think it's really funny because we had a cat growing up, Ebony. You remember Ebony?
Yeah.
And Ebony had a 2 litters of kittens, I think. And by the time I was around 10, Ebony was approaching the 20-year-old mark. So she was a very old lady.
She lived to be 21.
Yeah, she was an old lady, but she was also super protective of the kids of the family. And so this cracked me up because Ebony's favorite thing to do was to pick a person and she would sleep wrapped around your head like a hat because that was how she was like protecting you and like being close to you. And I remember I would wake up because we had a bunk bed growing up. This is not something many people knew. Yeah. And I was a top bunker. And I would wake up with my head, like my mouth and nose in the railing of the bunk bed so that I could breathe because Ebony was sleeping.
Like laying on your face.
Yeah, she was like laying on top of me and I didn't want to disturb her. And so I was like trying to find myself a breathing apparatus. So this really like hit home for me in a very good way.
Yeah, the cat is perpetually frozen on Giovanni's head and cat owners everywhere understood.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Giovanni's hilarious. The design of this character is unfortunately similar to... Do you know who Ron Jeremy is?
I don't know who Ron Jeremy is.
He's a bad man. He is a pornographic actor.
Wait, was he the guy in Boondock Saints?
Yes.
Oh, then I do know who he is. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
I love that movie.
And he's a very bad person.
We do not recommend that anyone under the age of 16 watch Boondock Saints. It is a really raunchy movie.
Yeah. And Ron Jeremy, it turns out, is like a huge shithead who's done a lot of terrible
He's
things.
a really bad dude.
Really bad
Really,
dude.
really bad.
But yeah, Giovanni looks like Ron Jeremy. It's
fair. I get it.
I don't know how much that was intentional, but I do think this guy's story is like, man, talk about your classic goofy Zelda characters. But anyway, this kicks off the whole Poe collection side quest.
Yeah.
Which I don't actually clearly remember what reward you get for getting. I think they said there are 20 Poes.
Do you want to know?
I do.
When you get 20 Poes, which is like half of the Poes that are available, there are way more than 20 Poes in the world. You get an empty bottle. For 20 Poes, you get an empty bottle.
Okay.
And just so you know, I'm halfway there just in my...
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I had 3 by the end of this, but in the back of my mind, I knew where at least 5 more were.
Yeah, there's a ton in the Gerudo Desert.
Okay.
Like a ton.
Yeah.
So this is not hard to get 20 Poes to get your empty bottle. I don't know what you get past 20 because I don't know that I ever completed the whole Poe hunting thing.
Is there a wallet upgrade? Because I'm currently maxed out at 500 rupees.
That's because you didn't go see Agatha, Lyndon.
Oh, my bad.
Giovanni's great. I think it's hilarious that he has a bunch of gold coins, which as far as we know are not actually valid currency in Hyrule.
Worthless if it's not a rupee.
Like, I have yet to see anywhere where there is a trade, but there's no like what's the thing where you trade currency to get
A currency exchange?
Yeah, there's no currency exchange in Hyrule. Like, I don't see anywhere where I can trade in my gold for some rupees. They only take rupees.
It's literally like a room the size of my kitchen that's filled with gold coins. I'm just like,
that mean nothing.
Those look nice, I guess.
But it means nothing. You can't spend them anywhere. If you can't spend them, they mean nothing. The economy is driven by the currency that it is used with.
Unless they have some intrinsic personal value to you, Matt.
Yeah, but obviously if you're a greedy person like Giovanni, he's really going for material wealth.
Okay, fair.
Like, it means nothing. You can't take a gold bar into Kroger and buy your week's worth of groceries.
Can I just say, Poes in this game?
Oh, they're so cool.
This is probably the scariest Poes I've ever looked.
They're so cool. I love the Poes in this game.
They're like
awesome.
Grim Reaper looking things.
I love them. They're great. So I was a little bit more prolific with my Bloopy trails. I'm going to spare...
Good word.
I'm going to spare most of them, and just like I got a lot of heart pieces that was just like general milling about going to do things.
Yeah.
I got the empty bottle in the fishing hole. So there are 4 empty bottles in Twilight Princess. I have 3 of them now. The 4th one comes from Giovanni when you get 20 Poes. The 3rd one is in the fishing hole. Anyone that wants to know how to do that, just go Google it. Super easy. I got a full other heart piece from milling about. And I also fully funded Malomart's expansion into Hyrule Castletown.
This is the plot line that I remember the most clearly, the side plot line that I remember.
This is the most memorable side plot.
Okay, I've got questions about Malomart. And
I have questions about Mallow.
Yeah. So, a very impressive young man.
But how old is he? He seems like he's like 4.
Where did he get the capital for this?
Well, the investiture into Hyrule Castletown 100% comes from Link. You spend 1,000 rupees to rebuild the bridge that is closest to Kakariko Village.
Right.
Then you spend another 2,000 rupees to expand into to buy out the Hyrule Castletown shop.
On top of the money that we already gave him to buy the Hylian shield and the
Hawk Mask.
The Hawk Mask.
Yes, which was 300 rupees a piece.
Which, by the way, we didn't talk about that last week. That's kind of a cool item that
Hawk Mask is awesome.
That I didn't remember at all.
Yeah, I love the Hawk Mask. I actually don't remember ever using it, but like it's a cool concept.
It's just like instant sniper mode for your bow.
Yeah, it's really cool. So I fully funded Malomart's expansion into Hyrule Castletown, which means I can now go buy the magic armor for 598 rupees if I so desire.
Okay. And the magic armor, So it works like the Bloopy armor in Tears of the Kingdom, right?
Yes.
When you take damage,
It takes away rupees instead of hearts.
gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So originally, I don't think you went into the shop in Hyrule Castletown last episode.
No.
But if you go into the shop in Hyrule Castletown, the prices are like ridiculously inflated for everything. Like a bundle of arrows is like 1,000 rupees, and the magic armor is 4,000 rupees. Like literally,
inflation, man.
everything is so expensive you literally can't buy it. So and then you go to Malamart and you fund the expansion, and he takes it over, and everything's discounted by 60% or whatever. So that's how you get 600 rupee magic armor.
Okay.
And I have not bought the magic armor yet because I expended all of my funds to help him expand into whatever.
Yeah, but rupees are not exactly stingy in this game. I feel like
Dude,
you'll make that up pretty quick.
They're so plentiful. That's how I was able to do it in 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
I literally raised 3,000 rupees in 2.5 hours. And most of that came from my other main Bloopy Trail of the week, which is Agatha and gold bug collecting. So gold bug collecting, you go to Agatha. The first gold bug you give her, she gives you the big wallet, which holds up to 1,000 rupees. And you give her more and more bugs. She gives you 50 rupees for each bug. But if you give her a pair of bugs, you get 50 rupees for one. And then when you give her the second of the pair, she gives you 100 rupees. So you get 150 rupees per pair of bugs.
Gotcha.
Up to 24 bugs. So whatever 24 times 150 is, I don't know. And then I did that I did more than half. So I gave her 13. I think I gave her 13 bugs total. So I funded all of Malamart's expansion with that. And I got the empty bottle. I got the heart piece. So when you reconstruct the bridge, there's the Goron that's moping over there, and you have to bring him some hot spring water. But you have to do it. You have to bring him a whole barrel of hot spring water, not just an empty bottle of hot spring water. So there's this little mini game where one of the Goron elders gives you a barrel that you have to carry over your head through Hyrule Field while dodging levers and Kargaroks.
Oh, so it's kind of like the giant bomb in Majora's Mask.
It's exactly what it's like. Yes,
Gotcha.
it's the giant bomb in Majora's Mask where you're just dodging tons of enemies. I failed that thing a dozen times at least because if you get hit by an enemy, you drop the barrel and it breaks.
Are you ready for a cool 2-second aside?
I'm always ready for a cool 2-second aside.
I'm browsing screen print poster Twitter right now. I will post a picture of this up in the Discord.
That's fun.
And if you're not in the Discord, hey, go become a patron, and then you can go see this picture.
$3 a month, and you can become a community of 50 who are really awesome people and love to talk
Really
about
awesome
Zelda.
people. So an artist who I actually have quite a lot of respect for has an ongoing Zelda series of screen prints.
That's your thing.
Well, there's room for multiples. He does a very different thing than I do.
Okay.
His name is Raf Venezuela, and he was commissioned to make a screen print for Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link.
Oh, wow.
Look at this.
Whoa. That is wildly cool. I see Horsehead. I see the Thunderbird. I see Volvagia Jr. I see Rebenek. I see...
That was Barbara, Matt.
Barbara. I see Barbara. I see... I'm glad you remembered that.
Yeah.
I see Barbara. Man, this is really cool.
It's a freaking sick screen print.
That is really cool. I would have that, and I didn't like this game. But I would have that poster.
This print makes me like the game more in hindsight.
Absolutely it does. That is
just
a really cool print.
By itself.
Holy moly.
Wow. Okay.
So anyway, the Goron that you dump a whole bunch of spring water on gives you a piece of heart. And I did the boat riding mini game just to clear it up and open it up. I didn't actually pay for it. I did the balloon popping mini game from the Parrot Plum, where you have to be Wolf Link and talk to him at Lake Hylia, and you can summon a Kargarok that you can fly back up the river to pop some balloons, and if you get a score above 10,000, then you get a piece of heart. I didn't beat that one because I hated it and that whole mechanic sucks. So I didn't do that one. I did it twice, but I failed both times because again, the mechanics and the control schemes are horrible. I also beat the Kuko flying minigame, the Island of Treasure or whatever. And that nets you 100 rupees, a piece of heart, 50 rupees, 20 rupees. So it's, I don't know, that's 170 rupees plus a piece of heart. So I did that one. And I collected a lot of rupees from blowing up various rocks throughout all of Hyrule.
Okay. Gotcha. Man, you're making me want to, as soon as we're done recording tonight, go hop in bed and knock out some Bloopy trails.
You really need to, because there are some good ones that really require some time investment that if you're just following along with the pod schedule, you're not going to have a lot of time outside of that to do.
So here's a good question for you, Matt.
Yes.
Do you feel like this game has got some top shelf Zelda Bloopy trails?
I would say it has so far one top shelf Bloopy trail, and that is Malamart expansion.
Okay.
That's kind of fun, and it also nets you a ridiculously good item.
Yeah.
Magic armor is like crazy cool.
And it looks sweet.
Yeah, in this game it looks amazing. I don't actually like the appearance of the Satori armor.
Oh, no, neither do I.
I think it looks kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
So this magic armor is like basically like a jeweled scale armor. It looks like you're wearing rupees.
Yeah.
And it's really with a gold headpiece, then a scarlet hat. Like, it's really cool. So I'm definitely going to buy that as soon as possible. That's the only thing I'm going to be spending my rupees on at this point is that. Oh, actually, the other thing is I got all 3 bomb bags. So you remember how last week we were talking about why can't I just have different bombs?
Yeah.
You can have 3 bomb bags.
Oh, sweet.
So I have a bomb bag for water bombs, and then I just have 2 bomb bags for regular bombs.
And you can keep them on you at all times?
Yeah. They're just in your inventory. You have
Sweet.
3 different bomb bags.
Well, this is the best bomb situation in any Zelda game then.
Yeah. So the way you do that actually is this is, I guess, technically a Bloopy trail. The giant rock that you use to melt.
Oh yeah, there's a Goron.
There's a
inside
Goron
of it.
in it, and
Yeah.
he gives you a bomb bag. If you go and do the Upland Zora boat game, she gives you a bomb bag for clearing the way down, so to reopen her boat game.
Gotcha.
So you can get 2 of the 3 bomb bags like within 50 yards of each other.
Okay, well, that just moved from being a frustrating system with a cool idea to being just a cool system.
Yeah, really great. Love it. I don't know that I'm ever going to buy the bomb bugs. I don't know that they have any utility.
Those are this game's version of bomb chews, essentially, right?
Right, but I don't remember them having specific utility. Maybe I probably should just to have them around, but the invention of bomb arrows makes bomb chews feel
Right. Sure.
unnecessary.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. Anything else, Matt?
I feel like there's one that I'm forgetting, but I'm forgetting it, so I'm just going to leave it.
Let's get into part 5, which is Z targeting, where we talk. Yeah, I almost just spilled my beer there. Woo! Man, that was close. Holy crap.
You almost dropped that on the ground, which would have shattered.
However,
glass.
I caught it, and that's the important thing. All right, let's get into part 5, which is Z targeting, where we talk about interesting characters that diverted our attention this week.
Oh, yikes.
I mean, I feel like you met far more people this week than I necessarily did.
So I've already used Zelda.
You have already used Zelda.
You have not used Zelda or Link or Midna.
I feel like I may get out of this game without using Zelda, which...
I'm glad I used Zelda when I did.
Yeah, it was probably for the best. I mean, I'm going with Giovanni this week.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
I think just like I said earlier, Giovanni feels like a classic goofy Zelda character to me. Just like ridiculous but like with some really funny dialogue and a really hilarious kind of backstory. But like tied in with a continuing mechanic that you're keeping up with throughout the rest of the game. Giovanni is hysterical. And if nothing else, the art style of this character, Ron Jeremy aside, just like such a funny design for a character. Just he looks hilarious. Like this person should be terrifying, right?
Sure.
But he just looks kind of funny. I liked it.
So I'm gonna get another main character out of the way this week because we try not to double up on Z targetings as much as possible.
Sure.
So I'm going to leave Midna for you for later, and I'm going to take Midna now. Because I think this is Midna's main turning point for me as a character.
That's very decent of you.
Yeah, I do it for the pod, Lyndon, not for you.
Thank you.
I think Midna as a character really comes into her own right here. She grows beyond the acerbic antagonistic character that she has been into one that still has a ton of personality and is still acerbic, but is no longer a controlling antagonistic gatekeeper of information, and becomes like a partner and a partner that I appreciate, because my personal life partner, I would say, is also a sarcastic sense of personality.
Sure.
She's got a lot of spunk, and like, I appreciate that a lot about.
Yeah, but she loves you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I think that's where Midna starts like to turn that corner here, where you feel the respect and affection that she has for you, instead of just the spunk and the sass. And like, spunk and sass is fine up to a point, and then if it's not met with an affection, then it just becomes annoying.
Sure.
And so like, Midna didn't cross the line into annoying, because it has now been tempered with the respect and affection.
Right.
And so like, I feel like this chapter is Midna's chapter to become a character who we deeply care about and who we feel strong emotions for, that are not just annoyance.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really great Midna chapter. So I'm taking Midna this week.
All right. Awesome. Man, look at you just knocking out your big ones.
Trying.
Yeah. Let's get into part 6, which is our final thoughts, in which we let Matt wrap up this section of the game in as succinct a way as he can think to do.
We played this section of game very grateful that we gave ourselves some breathing room between last week and next week, enjoying the time to luxuriate in the peak aesthetic that Twilight Princess has to offer, going through a really groundbreaking cinematic with Zant, and a hugely emotional set piece with Midna's lament and her salvation by Zelda's sacrifice, moving into a fun section of game where we explore the Lost Woods, which really delves into the mystery and the haunted vibe that the Lost Woods has always seemed to have been told to have, but we feel more keenly here in this game than ever before, culminating in the reclamation of our storied and legendary blade, which we will wield against the forces of evil for the rest of the game.
Well done, as always, Matt. That brings us to the end of the Sacred Realms Rundown. We will, of course, be back next week with another installment of the Sacred Realms Rundown, which will include a dungeon, one of the dungeons that I am always the most excited to play.
This is probably top 2 of my favorite dungeons in this game, and it's going to be a close tie when we get to the season recap of which one takes the cake.
Between this and Snow Peak?
Yeah.
Okay. They're so good.
They're both so excellent.
They're just really, really, really great. Can't wait to get into it. This has been a fun little episode, Matt. I mean, look.
And it honestly hasn't been that little.
No. I mean, I think we're going to come in right at about 2 hours with editing. Actually, no, because plot recap. So, no, it's going to be probably.
We can't do a sub 2 hour episode
It's
anymore,
impossible.
man.
It's impossible.
This episode is longer than the chunk of game we played.
Yep. Well, not me. Sorry, not you. It is for me. But like, you did your 2.5 hours of Bloopy trails.
We're insufferably loquacious.
We are. But you know what? We're not just talking to talk, right? Like there are legitimate things that we're breaking down here. Like
I do feel like everything we said had merit, at least in some point.
No,
we're not just
for
spitting
sure.
hot air.
But this is just that kind of game, right? Like there is a lot to talk about. It is one of the big Zelda event games. This is one of the tentpole titles. And so it just demands that level of discussion.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Is where I'm at.
And we have a lot of preconceived notions, as we talked about earlier in the show. Like we have a lot that we are trying to either get past or validate or, think about more critically than we ever have before. And that requires discussion.
You know what I think, Matt?
What do you think?
I think that the ranking is going to be much more complicated than we ever thought that it might be.
I really think this is going to shake things up in our top 5.
Yeah.
I really think this is going to shake some things up.
It's either going to fall right below that, or it's going to be dead smack in the middle of it and move a lot of things around.
Dude, this is really going to be a dark horse pick unless the back section of this game
is terrible.
Is awful. Yeah, this game is really going to have to work hard to not be in our top 7.
It's but this is a good problem to have. I mean,
absolutely it is.
Honestly, this is just, I'm having fun, man.
I'm having way more fun with this game than I ever thought I would. I was I dreaded it when we first started, but after our Legend of Zelda Link to the Past, or Adventure of Link, after our Legend of Zelda Adventure of Link season, I stopped dreading bad games or games that I wouldn't enjoy and started looking forward to them more. Yeah. And so at that point, I kind of was looking forward to it. And as we got closer and closer to it, I think I said in our one of our opening episodes, had we voted on our own poll, which we don't vote on our own poll.
Right.
Had we voted, I would have voted for Twilight Princess because I really wanted to play it to re-experience it because I feel like my preconceptions about it needed to be challenged, and I am 100% in that mind space right now.
Yeah, and the best part is in a few months' time we're going to have Majora's Mask, which really has the potential to take a shovel to the face of our entire ranking.
That still to this day has the potential to be our number 1. It really does, and people are probably going to laugh at that, but
a lot of nostalgia there.
Lyndon and I love Majora's Mask more than any other game in this series from just a pure nostalgia standpoint. And man, that is going to shake things up.
It's going to be fun. We'll see what happens.
I'm so excited.
Oh, man. All right, Matt. Are you ready to get out of here for the week? Maybe sit around the fire for another 5 or so minutes, let it die down, and then get out of here?
Yeah, we're going to have some brotherly chat off mic.
Sounds good.
How about that?
I love that. Quality time.
Sometimes we talk to each other in a respectful and loving manner.
You know what? If you have people in your life whom you are comfortable sharing quality time with, you should go do that ASAP. It's healthy.
Quality time is one of the 5 love languages, and even if it's not your primary love language, it may be the love language of someone who you care about. And you know what? Those times don't come back around easily.
Hang with the people you care about. Life's too short.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all. If you enjoyed today's show and you would like a little extra Sacred Realms in your life, you can head over to patreon.com/sacredrealmspod and become a patron. If you've got no rupees, it's not a problem. 5-star Apple Podcast reviews are a great free way to support us. More reviews means that more people see our show. That makes us very happy Hylians. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Sacred Realms Pod for updates on the podcast and for behind-the-scenes action. Sacred Realms will be back next Wednesday with our thoughts on Twilight Princess Chapter 6. We'd love for you to play along with us and to share your thoughts on our social channels. Twilight Princess can be played in its original form on the Nintendo GameCube or the Nintendo Wii. Its HD version can be played on the Nintendo Wii U, and all of these versions of the game can be emulated on a variety of platforms, but please don't do that unless you legally own the copy of the game that you're emulating. But in the meantime, may your hearts be full, may your arrows never miss. We'll catch y'all next week. Sacred Realms is an independent, listener-supported podcast, which is produced, edited, and mixed by me, Lyndon Willoughby. Business operations are handled by Matt Willoughby. Our music is generously provided by Darknuck and is available to listen to on Spotify. Finally, we'd like to thank Nintendo for continuing to create such exceptional and innovative experiences.